Kid Yamamoto was Japan's most violent fighter, a 135-pound wrecking ball who knocked out men twice his size and made legends quit the sport. Then he entered the UFC at 34, and everything that made him special got destroyed in front of the world. This wasn't just a fighter declining. This was Japanese MMA royalty being fed to the wolves while Dana White cashed in on his name. Kid didn't just represent Japan, he was Japan. And watching him get picked apart felt like watching a culture die in real time. For more than a decade, Kid Yamamoto was untouchable. Lightning-fast knockouts, legendary wars, violence as an art form. But Father Time doesn't care about legacy, and neither did the matchmakers who broke him. This is how one of the greatest fighters of all time became fodder for the newer generation, and why his fall still haunts everyone who witnessed it. Kid Yamamoto was born with violence inherited into his veins. His father, Ike Yamamoto, wrestled in the 1972 Olympics. His sisters, Miyu and Seiko, were world champions. Wrestling was blood and law in the Yamamoto house. By 5, Kid was already slamming kids in singlets. By 10, he was training like a grown man. No mercy, no excuses, just raw grind. They moved him to Arizona for high school to sharpen the steel in American wrestling rooms. He won 3 state titles at Marcos de Niza High, and when he wasn't drilling double legs, he was basically sleeping on the mats at Townsend Saunders' gym. Japan raised him, America forged him. By 24, he was ready to scrap for real. And nobody, not even his own father, believed in what came next. You see, Ike hated MMA, said that it wasn't a real sport, said it was just street fighting with marketing. But Kid didn't care. He walked into Ensign Inoue's gym anyway, Ensign being his sister's fiance, and he told him that he wanted to be the baddest fighter alive.
I met him because I started dating his sister.
Oh, so you didn't meet him in the gym. You met him after the
No,
fact.
I met him because I dated his sister, and then his sisters would come down and train with me. I ended up marrying the sister, not
Yeah.
the sister I dated first, but the other sister I met after I got to know the family. It's a real funny story. I knew about him. I knew that was their brother. He was a top wrestler. But we used to go and, with my girlfriend at the time, watch her brother, going to a wrestling event. So we go and cheer for him. I got to meet him just really lightly. And what happened, or big movement happened, was when he was in his college, he got into trouble with the Yakuza. He shot a Yakuza. She was just fooling around with his friends with an air pistol. And I guess, I don't know if I was on a ricochet or maybe he did aim at him. I don't know. But what happened was it hit the Yakuza in the face. The guy chased him down, followed him to his school, went to his dorm. They chased him out of his apartment, and he had to call me. And he actually jumped on the second floor of his apartment. And as he was running away, he called me for help. And I just told him to get to a restaurant where there's a lot of people, made some calls and called those guys off. But because of that incident, his college kicked him out of the school. The Wrestling Association in Japan put him on probation for a year where he couldn't wrestle for a year. And that's when I suggested to him that when your sisters come down to my gym to train, why don't you come down with them?
Ensign looked at this 135-pound wrestler and told him to prove it. He never looked back.
As a martial artist, he was one of those fighters that comes out 1 in a million, man. You teach him something one day, he uses it the next day in sparring. He was so athletic, and on the mats, he picked up stuff so fast, even in the striking. And his power, he had so much power and speed and agility. And that kid was like pretty much born for martial arts, I felt.
Yamamoto wasn't just a standard fast puncher. He punched like he was trying to delete people from reality. His early Shudo fights were short films of destruction. First-round TKOs, vicious ground and pound. His striking was wild but precise. Left, right, left, and you're unconscious. He was short, undersized, but he was a storm in human form. A guy who turned fights into accidents. He went 6-0 in under 3 minutes of total cage time. And then came the legend of the Josh Thompson no contest. Kid dominated the first round. Takedowns, bombs, total control. Second round, groin kick. Fight over. But the message was sent. America got the memo. This Japanese kid was for real. Trainers started whispering his name in hushed tones. Sparring partners told stories like he was folklore. You blink, you're out, they said. Then came the K1 Heroes contract. Japan was about to meet its most dangerous son. In 2004, Japanese MMA was peaking. Pride was a religion, K1 was thunder. Every fight was sacred. And into that storm walked Norifumi Kid Yamamoto. He choked out Tony Valente in under a minute, KO'd Jadamba Narantungalog inside round 1, crushed Ian Shafa after dragging him into deep waters. And then came 2005, the year everything changed. He didn't just win the Heroes Middleweight Grand Prix, he butchered it. He knocked out Hoyler Gracie with a single punch, outclassed Caol Uno so bad the doctor had to step in, but he wasn't done yet, because in 2005, he did something so insane it became part of MMA lore. Caol Uno was the old guard, a pioneer, the first Japanese UFC title challenger, a legend. Kid made him look like a rookie. They fought in September 2005. Second round, Kid starts teeing off. Uno's bleeding. The doctor steps in, stoppage. Kid walks off calm like he just finished breakfast. The torch wasn't passed, it was ripped out of Uno's hands and lit on fire. Uno was the past, Kid was the now. For a brief window in MMA history, Kid Yamamoto was untouchable. His win streak stretched 14 fights. He was knocking people out in seconds, ending careers, making legends reconsider their life choices. And he wasn't just winning, he was erasing opponents. Japanese fans treated him like a god. Kids wore his shirts, men idolized him, women loved him. And in the gym, nobody trained harder. Endless sparring rounds, brutal conditioning, drills until you puked. He wasn't just fighting, he was crafting violence into an art form. But all of that came with a cost, because behind the speed, behind the fame, behind the legend, time was waiting. And like the old saying goes, Father Time is always undefeated. Kid Yamamoto was 27 years old. He had just torn through Japan's best fighters, embarrassed the Gracie family, and knocked someone out in 4 seconds. Then he fought Ronnie Yaya. Yaya was a pure grappler, the kind of fighter who didn't throw bombs, just tied you in knots. But this was more than just about the style of fighting, it was about timing. Yamamoto still won the fight by TKO, but something was off. His takedown defense wasn't as sharp. His movement looked just a little slower. He got caught in scrambles that wouldn't have happened a year earlier. It didn't look like a warning at the time, but looking back at it from hindsight, that was the first crack in the armor. The year is 2011. Kid is 34. He should have never signed with the UFC. Not because he wasn't good enough, but because the UFC didn't care who he used to be.
Everybody knows you speak English, no, of course.
Yes,
Yeah, good.
So now,
Kid
you're a
Yamamoto.
reporter.
Yeah, Kid Yamamoto gonna fight in your fight. You're going to the Facebook.
Yes, Facebook.
No, and this is good for everybody to know him because man, these guys are star in Japan.
Thank you.
He's a showman. Gonna give a great show for us.
Yes.
Appreciate. Say hello for the guys from One Fight Gym. No? Like the gym, good gym.
Yeah, that's the best gym I ever seen. Yeah.
Good luck, yeah.
Thank you.
Good luck.
They fed him to Demetrius Johnson, a future flyweight champion in his prime with speed to match and cardio to burn. Kid looked lost. DJ took him down at will, outpaced him, made him look like he didn't belong. The fans didn't know what to do.
What's it feel like to be the first guy to fight Kid in the UFC and the first guy to beat him in the UFC?
I'm very excited. I got to give him a good welcome like I got when I came to WEC, and very excited about the W. I could have took advantage of a couple of things that he given me, but I wasn't able to capitalize on it, so I'm a little upset about that.
Yeah, when you were coming down the hallway, Kid came first, then you came, and you actually seemed more upset than he did. Were you sad that you weren't able to finish or get that submission or knockout?
I was just upset that, I didn't get the submission, and like when I fight, I always think I did a lot worse than what everybody else says. Everybody's like, oh man, you're so fast, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know, when I go into a fight, I always want to go into a finish and you know, I always want to have a perfect fight. You know, if I had a perfect fight, then I wouldn't be here, I guess. But I'm always trying to learn and grow as a fighter. So just a little upset with myself.
This wasn't the Kid they remembered. This was a 34-year-old legend drowning in a younger man's sport. Then came Darren Yunoyama, and it got worse. Darren wasn't elite, but even he out-wrestled Kid, controlled him, held him down like he was a nobody. Then came Vaughn Lee. Kid landed early, wobbled Lee with a right, the crowd came alive. The old Kid was back. Except he wasn't. Seconds later, Lee clipped him with a hook, took him down, and locked in an armbar. Submission loss. In Japan. In front of his people. That was the first time that Kid had ever been submitted. It felt like a funeral. After 3 straight losses, Kid took time off. 3 full years. He came back in 2015, UFC 184, Roman Salazar. It was supposed to be a bounce-back fight, an easy win, one last hurrah for the Japanese legend. Second round, accidental eye poke, no contest, and that was it. No farewell fight, no walk-off win, just silence. A few years later, we learned the truth. Kid had been battling stomach cancer since 2016. He kept it quiet, didn't want pity, didn't want headlines.
I actually was able to get a letter to Kid. I got a letter to him telling him that, you know, I love you as a little brother. I hear what happened. I pray for you, and I just wanted to let you know that I always saw you as my little brother. So they got him to read that letter, and what I understood, what they told me was when he got the letter, he read it and he cried. Never got to talk to him. Next thing I knew is I heard he passed.
But looking at those last fights, the timing, the cardio, the way his body moved, it's clear he was dying in front of us and nobody knew. When Kid Yamamoto finally stepped away from fighting, it wasn't with a bang. There was no grand speech, no post-fight interview with gloves on the mat. He just stopped. For a while, people thought he might come back. He was training, coaching, running Crazy Bee Gym in Tokyo. But the aura was gone, the speed was gone, and eventually the man was gone too. In 2018, the news broke. Kid Yamamoto had passed away at 41 because of stomach cancer. He had hidden it for 2 years, fought through it, smiled through it, and then, just like that, he was gone. Japan mourned like it lost a war hero. Not just because he was great, that he undoubtedly was, but because of what he represented. Kid Yamamoto was the last icon of Japanese MMA's golden age. After Kid fell, Japanese MMA never really recovered. Pride was gone, dream was gone, the UFC didn't care about Japanese fighters anymore. Crazy Bee stayed open, but it never found another Kid. Young fighters in Asia still idolized him, still watched his highlight reels, still tried to mimic that pace, that pressure, that fearlessness. But none of them could replicate it. And when he retired, it wasn't just a man leaving the sport. It was a whole generation closing the book. You still hear his name today, whispered with respect in fight gyms across the world. Young strikers study his setups. Older fans get nostalgic when they watch old heroes' tapes. Trainers still reference his footwork in blitzing combos. Kid bridged 2 worlds. He was traditional Japanese discipline wrapped in modern chaos. A samurai with boxing gloves. A wrestler who made knockouts look effortless. He connected the past to the future and became a warning of how brutal the sport of MMA and life can be. There's a difference between a brawler and an artist. Kid Yamamoto was an artist. He didn't just throw punches, he painted with them. Watch the Hoyler-Gracie knockout again. He doesn't swing wild, he steps in with precision, times it like a sniper, and collapses the legend with one clean shot. It's violent, yes, but it's controlled, intentional, almost too perfect. That is what separated Kid from every other pressure fighter. He was compact chaos. He changed the game for smaller fighters. Before Kid, bantamweights didn't knock people out like that. They wrestled, they scrambled, they went to decision. Kid turned that on its head. He fought like a bantamweight, but hit like a middleweight. His hand speed was stupid fast. His reaction time? Borderline supernatural. Even in training, he was different. He'd make people miss 3 punches in a row, then land a right hand before they could blink. That wasn't talent, that was obsession. Hours, days, years of drilling. And he forced the rest of the world to catch up. Watch today's bantamweights, their feints, their stance switches, their pace. So much of that traces back to Kid. Not directly, not consciously, just that he moved the bar forward and everybody had to adjust. But here's the part that nobody wants to talk about. Maybe he stayed too long. He entered the UFC at 34, an age when reflex-based fighters start to decline, and his whole game was built on reflex, on speed, on explosiveness. Once that faded, the magic died, and nobody protected him. Not the UFC, not the matchmakers, not even himself. He went 0-3 in the UFC, and those were not close fights, they were beatdowns. In a just world, he would have entered the UFC in 2006, right after the Genki Sudo masterpiece. At the peak of his power on a 14-fight win streak, before the injuries, before the wear, before the cancer started destroying his body from within. But he didn't, and that should be a warning for every fighter chasing one last run. Timing isn't just everything, it's the only thing. Kid Yamamoto was a bridge between worlds, between old-school Japanese warriors and modern-day MMA killers, between artistry and aggression, and that is why his name still echoes. Not because of what he did in the UFC, but because of everything that came before it. He wasn't perfect, he wasn't undefeated, but he mattered, and in this sport, that's everything. Walk into any MMA gym in Japan and ask the kids why they started fighting. Most won't say Sakuraba or Aoki or Gomi, they'll say Kid. They'll talk about the knockouts, the entrances, the hair, the attitude. They'll talk about how he made fighting look cool again. His highlight reels are still shared, his flying knee is still the benchmark. His style, that blitz forward wrestle boxing pressure cooker, is still being copied. Even if you don't recognize it, that's influence. That's legacy. Kid's story isn't just about fights, it's about mortality. He had everything: speed, power, fame, charisma, and he lost it all. Slowly, brutally, publicly. Fighters watched, fans watched, Japan watched. And through it all, he never complained, never made excuses, never asked for sympathy. He just kept showing up, even when the world had moved on. And that is what made it tragic. That is what made it beautiful. And that is what made him immortal. The truth is, Kid Yamamoto will never be in the UFC Hall of Fame. You won't see him on a lot of people's GOAT list. He won't have a statue outside an arena. But he doesn't need one, because what he did can't be measured in belts or bonuses. The UFC got his name, but they missed his greatness. Japan lost their greatest fighter, but gained a symbol of what martial arts could be. Kid didn't just fight, he created masterpieces with his fists. And sometimes, the most beautiful art comes from the most tragic stories.